6. The Budding Grove. Lower them easy, Jonathan ordered the others. Easy does it. The girl first. Then the old guy. The others obeyed Jonathan's every order. He was taller than the rest and handsome. The other children seemed eager to do whatever pleased him. Bobby was that way too. Dodie thought the sort of kid that thought of games for other kids to play, that other kids would want to follow. Still bound up, Dodie was handed from child to child, like baggage on a conveyor belt, down an oversized hole that pierced the drab surface of the planet. Jonathan made sure that they were not dropped or jostled as they descended into the shadowy tunnel. At first, Dodie welcomed the cool moistness underground. It was a relief after the ride in the hot sun. He and Elaine were carried along a path that twisted and turned, rose and fell, dividing again and again as Dodie and Elaine rode deeper and deeper into the interior of the planet. The corridor was dimly lit so that at first they could hardly see, and as the tunnel narrowed the air became putrid and suffocatingly close. "We'll have to stop and unbind them now," John Atlin said. "They're too big a load for the deeper passageways." "Won't they run away?" asked the girl with the golden hair. "Not if they want to get out ever again." Jonathan saw to it that they were lowered gently to the ground and not tossed or dropped. It took a minute or so for Dodie's eyes to adjust to the faint light that shone from the walls of the tunnel. He saw Jonathan pull a pair of scissors from a sheath sewn into his coveralls. With the hand that had been so recently rejoined to his body, the boy began cutting deftly through the sticky strings that covered Dodie. "I don't think you'll try to escape," he said to Dodie as he worked to cut him free. "I'll make sure that nothing happens to harm you." "I don't believe this," Elaine said. "They kidnap us and now they want us to think that they won't hurt us." "Just get us out of this stuff," Dodie said. "Please." "You can beg all you want, Dodie," Elaine said. "But Slash won't." "You'd never find your way out by yourself, Elaine," Dodie said, alarmed that they might be SCP-rated. "We need to stick together." "We could make sure that you stick together," said a little red-haired girl, twirling her lariat of gummy string. The others laughed at the joke. Elaine tried to ignore them. "I suppose you're right," she said quietly. "He can untie me too," she said. "Terrific," Dodie said. The army of children giggled, repeating again and again, "Terrific. Terrific. Terrific." "It means frightening, doesn't it?" Jonathan asked. "Only some of the time," Dodie said. "What one meant was great, fine or splendid." "So many opposite meanings," Jonathan said. "I wonder if I'll ever learn to understand you." Jonathan finished snipping Dodie free. Dodie rose stiffly to his feet, his joints popping as he moved, his limbs tingling. In the moon-glow dimness of light, he watched Jonathan work the scissors, snip by snip, until Elaine was free too. Even in the faint glimmer, Dodie could see the boy's full smile splitting the pale roundness of his face. He was enjoying the game he was playing. But Dodie was still frightened. He wondered what the children had in mind for them next. Where was the Budding Grove, and what was in store for them once they got there? He didn't like the sound of it. But if he and Elaine ran away, there was nowhere they could go without risking being lost in the tunnels forever. Jonathan was right about that. Dodie and Elaine were untied, but they weren't free. One by one, most of the children's army had disappeared down the tunnel, leaving Elaine and Dodie alone with Jonathan. "Where are they going?" Elaine asked. "You'll see," Jonathan said. "Just follow me." He began walking, and they had no choice but to follow. He took them through passages that turned and twisted and branched repeatedly. The ground was moist and even a little slippery. They were so deep underground that the pale, greenish light could not have come from the alien sun that baked the surface of the planet. The walls glowed with a radiance of their own, like lightning bugs, with a pale phosphorescence. They continued downward for a little way before coming to a wall that appeared to block them from going any further. But Jonathan simply pushed against it, opening the way. After they had all passed through, Jonathan released the barrier and it sprang back into place. They passed through many such doorways as they walked for hours in a grim silence. Dodie soon realized just how difficult it would be to find their way out of the maze of tunnels. He had long ago lost track of the branches they had taken. The passages reminded him of blood vessels, Twisting and dividing, the fleshy barriers were like valves. He shuddered at the comparison. Jonathan moved ahead steadily, confident of his direction, leaving Dodie and Elaine to scamper to keep up. They were getting tired. "Where are you taking us?" Elaine said sharply, when she felt too tired to go any further. "I'm taking you to our leader, naturally," said Jonathan, who stopped for the first time since the three of them had begun walking. "And then I'll show you the budding grove just like I promised." "How much further?" "Just a little way." "When will we get there?" "We'll be there pretty soon," Jonathan said. His voice, Dodie realized, was as odd as the rest of him. It was a younger kid's voice, not like Bobby's, which cracked and squeaked sometimes. Its tone was as clear and true as a note on an organ pipe, a perfect voice. Like everything else about Jonathan, it was too perfect to be real. "Pretty soon," he had said, just the way any kid would have said it. Not very soon, or presently, or shortly, the way a parent might have, but pretty soon, like a regular boy, but somehow not quite. Jonathan began walking again with long, quick strides that would have soon left his companions behind. "Can't we rest just for a minute?" Elaine said. "I'm tired." "I'm never tired," Jonathan said. "But I should have let you rest." "We can sit here a few minutes, if you want to." Elaine and Dodie hunkered down but did not actually sit on the wet, slimy floor of the tunnel. Jonathan followed their example. "You aren't human, are you?" Elaine asked. "We are Arad," said Jonathan. "Arad?" she asked. "Arad," Jonathan repeated, patiently. "It's the name we use for this place and those of us who live in it." "How did your family get here?" Dodie asked. "Did they come in a spaceship like ours?" "We're travelers like you, but we didn't have a spaceship," Jonathan said. "Arad didn't need a spaceship, not then. We sailed across space on a wind of light, looking for a place that was warm and wet. It was warm and wetter then. You can see how it's changed. Down here it's warm and wet all the time, but everywhere else, up on top, it's hot and dry." "Were you here when the first spaceship came?" Dodie asked. "Arad was here then," Jonathan said. "But not me." "Not yet." "So you were born here," Elaine said. "I was made here, not born. In the budding grove, where all the rest of us were made. You'll see." "I'm not sure I want to," Elaine said. "What happened to the ship?" Dodie asked. "What happened to the people from Earth?" "Like the Wanderer, the first ships of the migration were full of adults and children. The scientist Hoffman should have been among them. It had been his beacon they were following." "What happened to them all?" Dodie asked. Without answering, Jonathan rose to his feet and began walking quickly down the tunnel again. "To show you," he said as the others scrambled to keep up with him. After a few turns and branches, they turned into a larger passage that opened up into a rounded chamber the size of a school gymnasium. Glistening struts crisscrossed the space, giving it support. Even here in the great hollow cavern of a room, the walls glowed with light. Moisture dripped from every surface. A nasty drop hit Dodie's forehead. It was a thick, almost gooey substance, more like spit than water, and he wished that he could wash it away. The room was like the chamber of a heart. His fourth-grade teacher had shown the class a cow's heart, sliced open just like any piece of meat. But inside a wall of thick muscles were flappy pockets and surprising hollows, the larger ones full of struts and columns. The central chamber was like that, like an empty heart that had been drained of all blood, its movements stilled. But it was warm and wet. And it still seemed very much alive. There were hundreds of children bustling in and out of the chamber. The place was teeming with them. They were all too busy to pay any attention to Dodie and Elaine. "Is this the budding grove?" Elaine asked. "No, you'll see that later," Jonathan said. "Now I want you to meet Walter." From the middle of a cluster of children, a small, hunched figure of a man moved toward them. He wore a hooded cape that was covered in brown fibers like a coconut shell. The hump on his back was almost as large as he was. He glided toward them, as if he were skating across the floor. Jonathan immediately threw himself to his knees, placing his head on the ground while thrusting his arms up toward Walter. May Aunt live forever, he said. Forever, Walter said in a gasping whisper of a voice. I've brought you visitors, Jonathan said as he rose to a kneeling position. I can see. The creature pulled the hood back from his head. Dodie saw a withered little face. It was dark and shriveled as if it had been left in the sun to dry like an apricot. His mouth was puckered, and he seemed to have difficulty stretching it into a smile. His face was twisted to one side, all wrinkles and bulges on one half, taut and smooth on the other. Even his pointed, yellow teeth seemed small and shrunken. Pleased to meet you, Walter said. He spoke as if he were in the middle of an asthma attack and needed to take a breath after every word or two. Pleased to meet you too, Walter, Elaine said, walking toward him and extending her hand. Before she could reach him, the tiny man scuttled away like a cockroach. No touching? He screamed. Absolutely no touching? Jonathan by this time was on his feet, standing protectively between Elaine and the little personage. He's very, very fragile, Jonathan explained. It would be too dangerous to touch him. He's not ready. I didn't mean to hurt him, Elaine said. Is he your leader? He's the one among many, Jonathan said. He was like the rest of us and then he changed. The little man opened his mouth as if to speak, but coughed instead. A dry puff of dust exploded from his mouth. You must help us, Walter said at last. Dodie realized he was beginning to like Jonathan, but Walter made him feel on edge again, as if he were in the presence of a mortal enemy. The others before you, Walter said, they couldn't help us. We must leave this place, before the witness is gone. Before heat overtakes us. But their ship was crippled. We've been waiting for you. Now you can help us. We're stranded ourselves, Dodie said. The little man coughed again, filling the air with dust as fine as talcum powder. The smell of it was foul, like a mold-on cottage cheese left in the refrigerator too long. Elaine began madly waving the air to keep from breathing it. Alarmed at this sudden movement, Walter backed away. A swarm of children surrounded him, as if to protect him from her. The others will come for you, Walter said, once he was safe from Elaine's reach. The beacon will bring them, and they will take us with them. Where do you want to go? Dodie asked. Wherever you live, there can we flourish, Walter said. Wherever it's warm and wet. We won't take you with us. Elaine blurted out. Not on your life. Then, Walter said, his mouth too shriveled and puckered to show any feeling, you can't go either. We're prisoners, Dodie, said Elaine. They're holding us hostage. She began moving toward Walter, and the crowd of children closed in even more tightly around him. I am wary, Walter said. He began backing away. His dark, sunken eyes watched Elaine as he moved toward a wall. So very wary, he said as a giant flap of wall opened up behind him. It closed again with a sudden, fleshy snap, and Walter had vanished. Within seconds, all the children except Jonathan had disappeared from the chamber. Dodie was relieved that Walter was gone. Is Bobby a prisoner too? Elaine asked. Alone with just Jonathan and Dodie, she seemed small and frightened. I don't know where Bobby is, Jonathan said. He might be in the budding grove. Then take us there, she said. Right away. Follow me, Jonathan said. As they walked along hurriedly behind the tall boy, Dodie could hear Elaine crying. She could be far braver than he could, but she was still a young girl. I'm sorry that I got us into this mess, Dodie said. You couldn't know what would happen, she said. I'm a big disappointment to you, he said glumly. You wanted me to be the way I was, and now you're disappointed. I miss the way you were, Elaine confessed. She began crying even more loudly. You can't turn the clock back, you know, Dodie said, pulling his crumpled bandana from a pocket and offering it to her. She refused to take it from him. Elaine took Dodie's hand and for a second the pair slowed, not trying to keep up with Jonathan, who was striding way ahead. I know we can't change things, she said. But wouldn't it be nice if we could? I wish we'd never left the Earth and things were the way they always were. Dodie didn't answer. A part of him wished that they'd never rocketed off into space, but another part was glad they had, even if it had not turned out the way it was supposed to. Even if he'd known what would happen, would he have changed things? He didn't think so. They raced to catch up with Jonathan, slipping in their haste on the slick ground. By the time they caught up with him, they were breathless, but they did not want to be left behind underground in the fetid damp of a labyrinth. They would have to trust Jonathan to keep his promise to protect them from harm. After they'd walked for what seemed like an hour, Jonathan began racing far ahead of them, disappearing down a long corridor, nowhere to be seen. Dodie and Elaine began running until they came to a dead end in the passageway. They could hear a muted shout from the other side of a great fleshy wall. "In here," the voice said. They pressed against the wall. It opened like a giant mouth and devoured them whole. They were deposited, unharmed, into a sizable room. Side by side were dozens of slabs, arranged like beds in a dormitory. Jonathan's excited, high-pitched voice startled them. "I promised you I'd show you the budding grove." "So?" said Elaine. "Looks like summer camp to me." "This is where I came from," Jonathan explained. "I was copied here." "Copied from what?" Elaine wanted to know. "From a boy who came on the first ship," he said. "You could be copied too, then you'd be part of Erat, like me." "No way," Elaine said. Dodie was so exhausted that he sat on one of the slabs. But he looked at Jonathan with a new appreciation. Just as Dodie had thought, the boy was not a real person, but a copy, an ersatz child. And yet he looked and behaved, not like a mannequin or robot, but like a genuine human being. Dodie was so sleepy that he stretched out on the slab bed. He felt relaxed now in the budding grove, as if every worry had been taken from him. Dozing, he thought for a moment he was riding the waves at his favorite beach in California, bobbing up and down under a hot sun in the cool water. It was warm and wet there. The surf was gentle, pushing him toward land and then tugging him out to sea again. He wished his dream could go on forever and ever. Elaine screamed. "Dodie, get up!" She reached out a hand to him and pulled him roughly from the slab. "Look," she said. "You are sinking down." He could see the impression his body left behind in the bed of clay that had grown soft as mud. It was a mold ready to be filled. Dodie wasn't sure how. "You could be like me," Jonathan said. "We'd have fun together, the three of us." "What happened to the boy?" Dodie demanded. "The one you were copied from?" "The same as happened to all the others," he said. "He's mostly gone." "Mostly?" asked Elaine. Jonathan reached into a pocket of his coveralls. "Except for these," he said. "Erat always leaves these." Dodie reached out to take the small white objects from Jonathan's outstretched hand. "What are they?" Elaine asked. Dodie rattled them together like dice in his hand. "They're teeth," he said. "Human teeth."